Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the English farmers who say they're being forced into ploughing up wildlife habitats.
If they're not being paid for delivering stewardship and for delivering nature benefits, then they have to have a purpose. So they need to come back into production, and so we'll crop them.
More on that later. First, most carnivores would agree that using as much of the animal or bird as possible makes sense, both to avoid waste and for producers to get the best price. But while here in the UK we eat a lot of, for instance, chicken breast, we don't eat chicken feet. We like steaks, but not tripe, bacon, but not pig's ears. So you can see the problem. In ag speak, this is carcass balance, balancing the sale of the popular bits with finding markets for the bits that are less desirable here. And it's not straightforward, as we'll no doubt hear this week as we look into this issue. Dr. Margaret Bonus, chairman of the International Meat Trade Association, told me consumer tastes have changed over the years.
In the 1950s, liver and kidneys and hearts were staple parts of the diet. That's not the case today. Society has changed and we don't tend to eat that much offal. And if we don't eat it, it either goes to waste or we need to export it.
Given then our changing tastes, how easy is it to balance a carcass?
It's becoming more challenging because of issues around shipping. And also you need to obviously have trade agreements in place with the countries that do eat the pieces that the UK doesn't eat. But there is no doubt that there is demand for these pieces around the world. It's just making sure we have access to the markets to send them there.
And that changes, doesn't it? Because I remember in the past we would talk about the trade in chicken's feet going to China, but we can't do that at the minute.
No, we don't have access to China for chicken products. And there are a lot of people in the industry who would say that is very unfortunate because chicken's feet in the main go to rendering in the UK. There is a small quantity that goes into the domestic Chinese trade. Also pet food, there's a small quantity, but the bulk of them go into rendering, and the price you get from rendering doesn't even cover the cost of production. Whereas if you could export them to China, you could increase their value 12-fold. And they're going to somebody who wants them and who's going to eat them. And that's what it's all about. It's about sustainability, making sure when we deconstruct that carcass, every piece of it is valued somewhere and it's getting it to that market.
So 2 questions. Briefly, what's rendering and why can't we export chicken feet to China?
Rendering is how you get rid of the pieces of the carcass that you're not going to consume.
And why can't we export to China?
Because we don't have a free trade agreement. We don't have a trade agreement with China.
Given the complications of international trade, should we be doing more to try and balance the carcass here? So, for instance, we eat a lot of bacon in the UK. We don't tend to eat pig's ears, but I have seen them in pet shops.
I'm not sure that we will ever convince the consumer to start eating the 5th quarter in the quantities that we used to.
How important is carcass balance, just purely from a financial point of view for producers?
Definitely, if you can find a market for everything, it increases the value. So we touched on chicken's feet to China. We don't have permission for that, but we do have permission for pork. We have an agreement on pork. So we're already sending to China offals, tails, ears, trotters, all those kind of things. And it makes a difference of about 30 to 50 pounds per animal by sending that product to China. So when you think how many million pigs we slaughter, it's significant if you can get to the markets that want the product.
Dr. Margaret Bonus, chairman of the International Meat Trade Association. Farmers in England are warning that this year they'll be growing crops on land they've previously used for wildlife habitats and biodiversity. Many countryside stewardship agreements covering thousands of acres come to an end this year. They've paid farmers public money, usually for at least 5 years, to manage land for nature. Farmers say they can't sign up for new agreements as England's new system, the Environmental Land Management Schemes, or ELMS, isn't working. Now, these old countryside stewardship agreements fall into two types, mid and higher tier. The mid tier is being replaced by the SFI, the Sustainable Farming Incentive, which, as we've discussed a lot here on Farming Today, was suddenly closed earlier this year when the money ran out. The government says a new, more targeted scheme will open next year. The new higher tier scheme, which opens in September, is invitation only. Tom Allen Stevens, who farms in Oxfordshire, says that leaves him and many others with no alternative but to plough up land currently left for wildlife.
We've had land and countryside stewardship for about 15, 20 years, and we've increased that area over the years from about 15% to where it currently stands, which is at about 35%. And we've put various options into that land, legume fallows, nectar strips, and things like that. And those are the areas that I'm now looking at that I'm not going to get paid for.
And so what's going to happen to them?
Well, we're going to have to plough them up and put them back into production. If they're not being paid for delivering stewardship and for delivering nature benefits, then they have to have a purpose. So they need to come back into production. And so we'll crop them.
Now, this is happening because your existing countryside stewardship agreement is coming to an end. Why not just renew it?
I can't renew it because, over the years, they've been 5-year agreements that we've had. And every time an agreement has come to an end, there's been a new scheme that we've been able to start to carry on the stewardship areas. But they've closed the Sustainable Farming Incentive. And that's the scheme that should be carrying it on. So there's no mechanism whereby I can get paid to carry on this stewardship.
There is, though, the new countryside stewardship, which is the second tier of the system. So why can't you go into that?
If you're talking about the higher tier, I think that's by invitation only, and we haven't been invited.
What will this mean for nature on your farm?
I think if you were to visit my farm today, you'd be quite impressed at what you see. We've got wildflowers, we've got loads of insects, butterflies, everything, birds and so on. I went out into one of my fields the other day and I came across a skylark nest and my heart just sang with joy. We are really achieving what we set out to achieve. But if you come and visit my farm in 2 years' time, it'll look very different. There are all sorts of areas that won't be growing those lovely wildflowers, won't be nurturing the birds and the insects. And you will notice a difference.
They do bring benefit to your farm, don't they? Not just the beauty, but they also bring in pollinating insects and so on. So isn't it worth keeping at least some of it?
Well, there will always be pollinating areas on this farm. I mean, we're reducing it down from about 35% to about 5%. So that 5% will still produce the pollinators. And according to the research, yes, they do provide some benefit for some crops. But it's a very limited benefit and it's very difficult to cost in. We don't use any insecticides here anyway, so we get plenty of beneficials coming into the crops. So I think the actual marginal benefit it's going to provide to this farm in terms of greater crops and greater crop productivity is pretty small, actually. And it doesn't justify the cost, the huge cost that we actually incur of A, setting this land aside, and B, then managing it in the right way.
Tom Allen Stevens. DEFRA told us that information on the reformed SFI will be released later this summer before the scheme reopens next year, and that, as of April this year, there were more than 32,000 countryside stewardship agreements running alongside 25,000 SFI agreements. Martin Lyons, a Cambridgeshire farmer who runs the nature-friendly farming network, says the government should now offer 1-year rollover agreements to bridge the gap.
Government know how many thousands of farms are finishing the end of this year, and they haven't got certainty. So I think there's been a failure in delivering that roadmap of joined-up approach to new agreements. And as we know, the old funding of BPS, the area-based payments funding, has been reduced and removed. So we were told to look forward to the new public money for public goods as farmers, but we haven't got a clear roadmap of when those options are available. And that's leaving farmers in some really difficult positions, particularly those who are renting land or got finance attached, not having certainty on funding coming in to deliver those public goods.
We're talking in August. Some of these agreements won't end till the end of the year. Surely there is still time.
That's what these agreements do not finish till the end of December. And that's the depth of winter, so farmers won't be rushing out straight away the day after. But government have a window of time to give farmers the confidence, maybe offer a 1-year rollover agreement so the farmers have confidence until the new agreements can be set up and run, that actually carries on the delivery for the environment and for nature across those many thousands of farm landscapes.
Ministers might say that really they're a victim of the success of these schemes, which is what they talked about when they closed the SFI earlier this year. They say you can't have these schemes staying open when the budget is finite.
There's only a limited budget, but we know that some of the options in the past haven't actually delivered the best value for public money, and farmers have been encouraged to take up options that haven't actually been the best value. And we need those funding to deliver right across all farm landscapes, so all farmers have the ability to do some actions on their farm that deliver for nature and underpin food security.
You've been trying to persuade farmers for some years now that nature-friendly farming is the way forward. Does what's happening actually kind of prove you a bit wrong?
I don't think it proves us wrong at all, but what it does do is just drives uncertainty. We know that farming in ways that you focus on soil health and the benefits of biodiversity can help reduce your costs. And it's about getting the blend and balance right on each farm. And that public money for delivering public goods is that extra contribution in our farm landscapes that helps make us a resilient business when we have changing weather and changing markets.
If farmers do come out of these schemes, as Tom Allen Stevens is describing, would you expect them then to go back at some point?
I think the confidence in government and in DEFRA is at rock bottom for many farmers. And I think for many, if they come out, they probably won't go back in, or that the temptation, the offer will have to be significantly more.
Martin Lyons from the Nature Friendly Farming Network. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Sally Challoner, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.